Hello, Rollers. Come on in. We're getting ready to have another great episode. And let me just say, with football season in full swing and me being a Texas girl, and yes, I do believe every year the Dallas Cowboys are going to win the Super Bowl. I thought it'd be a great time to bring a new person for you to meet and introduce you to the first black football player in the NFL. He would later become the first black NFL coach. I want to thank everybody for joining me for today's episode of Royal Black and Elite as we learn all about Frederick Douglass Pollard, known to the world as Fritz Pollard. I'm so glad you tuned in. I'm Lady Trinette Wilson. I am your lecturer and a social historian and the author of The Royal Black and Elite. You all, I want to thank you today. I mean, just from the bottom of my heart. You Royalers mean so much to me. Every time you like, share, and subscribe, you let the algorithm know that Royal Black and Elite is important to you. And we are on the march to 1,000 subscribers. So we're almost there. I want to thank everybody for your support. And now, let's get into our story about the first black NFL player. So, before we begin our conversation about Fritz, I want to introduce you to this man, Kenny Washington. He is the first black man who signed an NFL contract in 1940 with the Hollywood Bears. But way before him, there was another man who is Fritz, who was actually the first black NFL player. But back then, the NFL wasn't called the NFL. It was actually called the American Professional Football Association. And honestly, I'm glad it went away because once I tell you this story, it's going to, you're going to be glad too that it turned into this new organization called the NFL. So I want to clear that up before I tell you about this great man born on January 27th, 1894 in Missouri. His parents were John William Pollard, and John was a barber, but he was actually also a professional wrestler. And Amanda Hughes Pollard was his mom, and she was a seamstress. And here we see his parents here. Now, Fritz played football in the 1900s, the early 1900s. And during that time, football was rugged and rough. They allowed people to get punched, hit, spit on, kicked on, anything during a game. And Fritz was often at the bottom of that pile because he was only 5'9" and he weighed 166 pounds. Well, let me take that back. That's only when they could catch him because they said he was one of the fastest runners ever. And because of his speed, he was able to attend the Albert G. Lane Manual Training High School. It's also known as Lane Tech. It's in Chicago. Have you ever heard of Lane? If you're in the Chicago area, leave it down in the comment. I really would like to know. So Fritz did really well at Lane. He really excelled in sports, running, basketball, and football. And because of his grades and his abilities, he actually got a scholarship by the John D. Rockefeller Foundation. And so this took him to Brown University in Providence, Rhode Island. And he made a difference immediately, taking the team to the Rose Bowl in 1916 and winning. So between 1918 and 1920, Pollard would break records. His career would just expand. But one way it also expanded was into coaching. So he started coaching the Lincoln University football team in Oxford, Pennsylvania. He also served as the athletic director of the Army training program at the school, and he also served in World War I during this time. So, I mean, his life is phenomenal, and it just surprises me. No one has ever heard of this man. Even though he's starting to get some recognition, I would love to see a movie about him because his life was extremely interesting to actually be coaching and playing in college, and then we're going to find out later in the NFL. during a time where racism and segregation was really, really bad. But he made a career of it. And so he must have really had a real calling for the game on his life. And it's also during this time in 1914 where he met and married a woman named Ada Lang. And they were married many, many years. They had three daughters and one son. And I mean, this family is so phenomenal. His son actually won a bronze medal in the 1936 Summer Olympics in Berlin. So his family was very special. Him and Ada stayed married many years, but they actually got separated um, in 1920. So they were married in 1914, had four children, separated in 1916, and actually didn't get divorced till 1940. And that was commonplace back in those days. People would stay married for years. I mean, for 20, 30 years, so they would live separately, but they would stay married. And so that's what he did. He and Ada did. But he did remarry in 1947 to Mary Ella Austin, whom he stayed married to until his death. With all his success, the next level was coming, and it did. A team called the Akron Pros approached him about playing for them, and he took the job. So he left the team, the Brown, and he kind of fallen out with them. He said they didn't have proper equipment, that they didn't travel nice. So it was a lot of things going on with that team. So he was glad to go. I'm more than sure. So once he got with the Akron Pros, he also took on some coaching. So his skill of coaching continued there. Now, he was also there was one other man, the Mr. Marshall here. I've showed your picture here. He was also he was the other black man in the NFL at the same time as Pollard. But Pollard went first and he made a whole career out of it. Whereas Mr. Marshall, he did something else later in his life. So they started playing football, and wouldn't you know it, they won the championship. Man, Pollard was just a winner everywhere he went. But the saddest part about this story is in 1926, the NFL made the decision to expel him and the other 8 black players at that time in the NFL from the league. Now, some say it was because of depression and a downturn in the economy. Others said, yeah, it was a downturn in the economy and that the white people didn't want to see black people employed and making money at that time when they weren't. And it didn't help that, Pollard was the highest paid football player at the time. He was getting paid $1,500 a game, which would work out to about $54,000 per game. And in fact, Fritz said in an interview at the time, quote, "It was evident in my first year at Akron back in 1919 that they didn't want blacks in there getting that money. And there I was, playing, coaching, and pulling down the highest salary in pro football." These men were powerful. They had turned this league around. In fact, he played with Paul Robeson, the singer. And rumors were during that time, or reports were during that time, that Paul Robeson and Fritz actually saved the APF. But it wasn't good enough for them. They kicked him out. All of them in 1926. And in 1934, they made it official. And the NFL was segregated until 1946. Well, that did not stop Mr. Fritz. Mr. Fritz started his own teams. In the 1930s, he had the Brown Bombers. In 1928, he had the Blackhawks. And he started businesses. So he owned many different types of businesses. He had a newspaper, a talent agency, a tax consulting business, and a production company. And in fact, his brother Luther actually became a multi-millionaire after founding the Ebony Film Corporation, where he made all kind of different productions. So he became wealthy from that. And so things were going well until The Depression came, finances started hitting, and everything started falling. And unfortunately, like so many of our Royal Black and Elite stories, which I get so mad because they are a lot of them in like this with athletes, especially. He lost everything after that depression, after the economic downturn. And so he didn't get to live out in the finances that he was making. Because if he was making $54,000 a game, he should have had some money left. Or at least in my opinion, he should have. But nevertheless, Fritz retired in 1937. And in 2005, he was honored by the NFL by being inducted to the NFL Hall of Fame. And many awards came even after that. His alma mater honored him with this plaque. And so, his life really left an example for many. And he did get honor toward the end of his life. So I'm so excited that he got to get his roses while he still was alive. He passed away in 1986 from pneumonia. And he left many firsts behind: the first Black NFL player and the first Black coach. So that has been the story of Fritz Pollard. I hope you all enjoyed that during football season as we prepare for the Dallas Cowboys to take it home in 2023, 2024 and win the Super Bowl. Well, a girl can have some dreams. I want to thank you for sharing some of your day with me. Today's video has been for educational and entertainment purposes only. My sources were Pro Football Journal, the Brown University online resource, the Britannica, and Black Pad. I'll see you on another great episode of Royal Black and Elite.